All right, hey, this is Matt Soche and Brendan Kaliva, and
Hey.
we are starting a podcast channel, and this is going to be called Lunch Talks with Matt and Brendan. So pretty much the idea of these are we're going to try and cover some situations that we like to talk about, and jokingly enough, we call this our one ever existing conversation
Yeah.
that we never really end. We just postpone to continue later. So this is the continuation of that. So the idea of this first podcast, hopefully, if we don't get on too much of a tangent, is kind of political philosophy, talking about different things in our politics that, you know, I think the media, what happens is the media is, I think there are enough people in the world, in our media, that are actually trying to do the right thing. But I think you find those a lot more on the small scale because they're not as funded. They're really nice, but they're not as funded. I mean, and one of the ones I like is Comedy Central with The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Now it's Trevor Noah, and it's absolutely hilarious. But it's things like that that are not as mainstream, but I think they cover things on a lot more real scale. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, totally. Because with that, it's a much more authentic, real life kind of thing. And with the media, it's almost like they just choose some kind of topic to get mad about. And it's like, all right, this is what you should be focusing your attention on is this, this, and this. Even though so many other things are happening around the world. Like for example, when we learn about Uganda in class, all those kids sleeping in the streets and they were dying and it was so terrible and no one knew about it because it was this terrible thing that was happening and the only thing that drew attention is what makes money for the media because that's basically what they're there for is making money.
Right. And it's things like today I was watching something, I think it was from the Young Turks.
They're good.
Yeah, I love them. And it was, they had a whole group of Harvard, or this guy went out to Harvard and he was interviewing the students, asking them what they felt was the biggest threat to world peace. And he said, and he gave them two options, ISIS or America. And only two or three, he said, actually said ISIS. But the majority of Harvard students said it was American imperialism, going around and trying to impose, what we think we should do with the world, being world policed, that our actions have much, much greater consequences than, say, ISIS. And it cuts to Fox News, and the lady says, "Oh, Harvard University students." And it was funny. The last girl, she said, I think it's really, this is at Harvard, said, I think it's, it's absolutely insane what America has done, and it's really outlandish. And she said, "Oh, outlandish. Oh, we have a large vocabulary." And then it cuts to the Young Turks, and he's just like, "Outlandish? Is that really the biggest? Is that considered in large vocabulary?" And the other guy's like, "Well, that is large vocabulary. But that's the biggest word that's ever been said on Fox News history." That's what he said. It's interesting that you had all of those Fox and I mean every single Fox News analyst in there was joking at how those Harvard students were acting, that they think that this is a real problem, that America is the problem with world peace, that these Harvard students, they think they're smart, they're all preppy and everything, but they don't know anything. And in fact they actually had funny enough, a country singer come in and talk about how how bad that is. And it started, he said, "Man, these guys, they are a threat to the gene pool. We can't have these people in our..."
Who? Fox News or Harvard?
Fox News, the country singer said that the Harvard students were a threat to the gene pool. And then it cuts to the Young Turks guys, and they're like, "A threat to the gene pool? Who's really the threat to the gene pool here?" But they were talking about how, these students just don't understand real life. Having been a student for the vast majority of my life, and understanding the process of getting into college, Harvard is like, it's not even something that I would ever consider trying to pursue. I wouldn't even try and pursue Rice or Vanderbilt. Harvard and Yale and Ivy League schools, those are even higher than that. And so I honor, the intelligence, like their brains are at such a, developed state that I don't even question their intelligence. So it's very interesting how Fox News covers it that way. And then actually, in fact, the Young Turks, YouTube channel, then covers that whole story, developing. And so, I think that comes from a huge fact that perhaps that the Fox News, contributors and donators and things were, they have a certain political ideology that, that we don't have to say is right or wrong, but they want to, they have that idea, they have a lot of money, and they have a news channel. And they have a lot of people who they think they can cater to, so they just do that, and it's things like that. For me, and one of the things that they were talking about, and you said you had not seen it, but just recently, President Obama came out with an executive order, and what it said was pretty much bumping up the existing gun laws. Because being the executive branch, he has the power, the authority to enforce laws as they need to be enforced. He's pretty much just saying, take the laws that we have in place and enforce them this way. And what that included was every single gun buyer needs a background check, because there's a loophole in the system where if you buy through a gun store, you have to go through a background check. If you go buy a gun at a gun show or online, you don't have to go through a background check. And he's just saying that those sellers cannot sell via those faculties or that media, without a background check. And in his address, he started talking about how every American's right in the Declaration of Independence, and of course it's not actually law, but it's our creed, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was taken away from college students, high school students in Columbine, and then first graders in the Sandy Hook. And it's at that point he started to tear up a little bit, and he wiped away tears. And Fox News covered that as the tears weren't believable enough. Only psychopaths wipe it in this certain way. And then what got me was they covered it as, so we had San Bernardino, and we had Paris, and we had these massive acts of terrorism, and he didn't shed one tear. But then talking about gun rights, he sheds a tear. This president is incompetent and has no real feelings. And then that's when I get to, and my biggest argument against that is 30,000 people, 30,000 Americans each year die from gun violence. That covers everything. Okay. First of all, 20,000 of that 30,000 kill themselves. Yes. All right, so that's a huge problem. 20,000 of that 30,000 kill themselves, and the other 10,000 are the ones that are killed by other people. All right, so we have 10,000 who are murdered and 20,000 who take their own life. Under 30 Americans are killed every year by acts of terrorism.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's the fact that, and I can I'll link in the description where I get those numbers, that the fact that if you cut terrorist deaths in half, you go from 30 to 15. If you cut suicides in half, you go from 20,000 to 10,000. Or you're talking about a 10,000 statistic drop versus a 15, statistical drop. I think it's the fact that when you look at suicides versus terrorism, which one's more scary? More scary to you? If I say someone's coming out to kill you who wears a turban and happens to be Muslim, and he's going to come kill you, that may evoke some kind of fear. If I say, hey, this guy's about to go kill himself, you might feel sorry for him. Those are two very different feelings, don't you think?
Oh, totally. And, oh my gosh, you said so much stuff, and I want to bring it back to the part where it was the Harvard students and Fox tied all together. So, I find it interesting how the only way to deflect what the Harvard student said was to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Was to say, oh, okay, because you say this, you're stupid. It's a blanket statement, no substance behind it. There was no analysis of what's truly going on. There's no analysis of comparing ISIS to America.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know real life because you're in an educational situation. And not only are these people very educated, but they have also employed a great deal of what I think of as virtue in their life. Is that hardworking, focus, organized, all these things employed, that forces you to go into a deeper experience of life than someone who goes to a community college. So they're very in touch, I would say, with themselves and with the world around them. And it's kind of sad that they knock it off by saying, oh, whatever. It's just, they're stupid. And the power is in the minds of the everyday person. You and I, our friends, the people we see on the street. I read this book by Wilhelm Reich. I listened to the audiobook called Listen, Little Man. And he's talking about all these people who make themselves small in their minds. And one of the things he says, just to tangent off a little bit, is you're small, and when you see someone's bigness in them, you try to crush it out because you're scared of that, because you can't handle the fact that they reflect back to you your own ability to be big, because you're scared of that and you make yourself small. And so he calls a small man the person who believes in their mind that they don't have the ability to form their own opinions, that they just latch onto a certain group or an organization, and they're the people who are responsible for people like Hitler. The ones who are, this is maybe a radical statement to make, but I believe the ones who all go to a rally that's just for one subject, and they all stand there and they're like, hurrah, yeah, let's go. Those are the same people who would have been chanting Heil 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And Wilhelm Reich was saying, little man, you don't understand how your own murderousness, because you're contributing to this evil that's happening because you don't choose to think for yourself. And we have a great deal of evil, violence, whatever you want to say, going on in the world because people don't live or think for themselves. And it's very sad.
And I think there's something there too, is that and it goes back to what we were learning in economics, that self-interest promotes aggregate interest, that those people who are not respecting themselves in turn become those who completely discriminate against other people. And it's something that, and also I should go back and preface everything that we say in this podcast as, in no way do we want to try and impose any kind of political ideology on anyone.
Absolutely. This is just thinking, philosophizing.
Right,
like that.
Exactly. And we want to try and kind of express our ideas and see if there's anyone out there that, agrees. And here where we are on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, is a very, very, if you will, extreme political, area. Yeah, environment. And so for those who aren't in that area, who might actually hear this podcast, understand that's where we're coming from.
Totally, yeah.
But what you were saying about, being on, that act of not essentially respecting yourself will turn to what is called pathological, one-directionism. And there's a book that I have over there, and I borrowed it from Brother Bernie first, and then I bought that one. And it's called The Sexual Celibate, and it's written by this Catholic priest philosopher. And it's very interesting because it actually enlightened me to a lot of real ideology that doesn't just stick to, you shall not do this, you shall not do that, you shall do this, and to do that, then you will be happy. He writes it as a philosophical thing. And there's, at least here, there's a huge amount of homophobia, I think. And what the book explains in one part of it is that everyone should be in some way homosexual, and everyone should be in some way heterosexual. and it's the fact that the sexuality is the way that you build relationships with other people. Genitality is the way that you want to express your actual sexual arousement, on someone. And genitality is what most people try and define sexuality with. But sexuality is more just about your relationships with people. So, for example, us being friends is a homosexual relationship because, and it's weird, but it's the fact that in no way ever is there any genitality. It's the fact that we have built a relationship that is between two people of the same sex, and it's that simple. And the thing is it and obviously you can see that it is very obvious in understanding this, but it states there that being only homosexual or being only heterosexual, what it calls pathological or pathologically homosexual and pathologically heterosexual, are in fact evil and totally bad. Because if you cannot at all ever get along with either the other sex or your own sex, you will have a very, very difficult time in life to progress and to become a well-rounded human being. Now, as it goes to genitality, that's a totally different argument. And whether or not you believe that, two people of the same sex or different sex should have, some kind of genital relationship, that's totally different.
Yeah.
But from a standpoint of being homosexual or heterosexual, I think the idea is to be very, very general. That if you cannot build relationships with other people of the same sex or a different sex, then that is a problem. And work on building those relationships. And the idea is to take one of those relationships that you feel is maybe strongest, and then if you feel some kind of genitality towards that person, then that's when you can get into marriage and into sexual acts and things like that. That's how the human relationship spectrum is kind of supposed to work. And it's that same idea, is that thus by not respecting yourself and your superiority and not necessarily inferiority, by not respecting yourself, you become pathologically one way. Everyone who followed under Hitler's fascism was pathologically fascist. If you supported that. Of course, there are a lot of people who were oppressed by that, who were under the system but didn't support it. Look at all the Jews, in Nazi Germany. They had to hide. And it's the fact that everyone who supported Hitler was pathologically fascist. And this is a really weird idea, but you could be both fascist and communist. Probably wouldn't be a very good mix. But the idea of merging both things, and from the very, very far left is communism, from the very, very far right is fascism, and then one step in you get socialism, and you could put libertarianism on it, and then you have liberalism and conservatism, and then in the middle you have moderate.
Yeah.
And the idea is that no matter what you're talking about in any of those, try to be as much in the middle as you can. And it reminds me of a picture, and I can put it on the YouTube podcast, but it's that, let me pull it up here. It's pretty much understand, and it's from Bernie Sanders, or it's not from Bernie Sanders, but it's about Bernie Sanders. And he calls himself a democratic socialist, which Fox News has been able to twist into communist somehow. And it says here, capitalism minus socialism is fascism. All right, so think about that. Capitalism minus socialism is fascism.
So that means that they're intertwined already.
Right, and exactly. And it says here, we can agree that you cannot have socialism without capitalism. All right, you cannot have a very open plan without having a plan that capitalism to get you somewhere, to have competition. Because if socialism without capitalism becomes communism, because there's no competition. There is only everybody give everything of yourself, and then we will distribute it, how we want. There's no competition there. But it says also, but you cannot have capitalism without socialism, or it becomes fascism. And it ends in the same place. And that's the weird thing about the political spectrum, is the far left and the far right end up in the same place in totalitarianism. Because having or believing either one, that you should have no competition, means everybody gives everything that they have to one entity, and then they decide how that goes out. In fascism, you have what turns out one person that encompasses all of the competition, or beats all of the competition, and then gains all of the wealth of the entire nation, and then from there distributes it.
It's the same pathology on both sides, the same kind of pathology, but they use different mediums to express it.
Exactly, absolutely, exactly. And that's the idea, and it's the fact that either side is bad, and we don't want either side, so Bernie Sanders supporters are understanding that, yes, this is democratic socialism, because we already have plenty of capitalism, in the fact that, and I'll show you another picture, in the fact that the 6 members of the Walton family, the 6 heirs of the Walmart fortune, own as much wealth as 42% of America, the bottom 42% of America. And another stat from, what's his name? Russell Brand's Revolution, his book Revolution, is that a bus with the 85 richest people in the world would, in itself, including the bus, encompass the bottom half of the world's wealth. That's 3.5 billion people. Yeah. Is that not crazy?
That's really sad. And I had this sticking in my mind, so I just have to say it. Mm-hmm. For anybody who's sitting at home who is freaking out about hearing, homosexual or heterosexual relationship, mm-hmm. That's not... Well, because most people throughout their lives, they've heard the word sexual relationship, and they think sex. Mm-hmm. That's not exactly what you were saying. What you were saying was homo, same. Mm-hmm. Sexual, between the sexes. Mm-hmm. Hetero, different. Sexual, between the sexes. And I just wanted to clarify so nobody thought, and what you're saying with genitality means actual sexual intercourse or anything of that sort. Right. So if you have a lot of homosexual and heterosexual relationships as you define them, it's just friendships. Like you talk to somebody mm-hmm. because you're in the same sex. You're a friend who is a male. If you're a male, that's a homosexual. Your friend who's a female, if you're a male, mm-hmm. that's hetero, and it has nothing to do with actually having sex.
Right. We are not promoting the society that George Orwell puts in 1984 of growing kids to have sex from age like 3. We're not saying.
Oh no, that was different. That was
Was that Brave New World?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brave New World. Sorry, by Aldous Huxley. Those two are so similar, but it's the idea that we're not. And thank you, Brendan, for saying that, because I'm not trying to say that you should have sex with both sexes as much as you want. And in no way is that what I'm conveying.
Or that everyone is a sexual relationship.
Right. No. It's nothing like that. It's the fact that we're using the Latin base of the words sexual, hetero, and homo. Those bases to understand relationships. And it's the idea that you should have a healthy mix of both, and same with capitalism, socialism. It's saying you should have a healthy mix of both. And I think for this podcast, maybe, is the idea that that's what you want, a healthy mix of what you can, have.
Yeah.
And so that's about all we're going to talk about today. Thank you for listening or watching or whatever you're doing to take in this form of media. We will have more coming out soon. Hopefully, and we'll see how this all works out. Nice. Thank you guys for listening.
That was really good.